The lecture hall of the Galactic Academy shimmered with quiet energy, filled with hundreds of young alien cadets from dozens of worlds. Their armor gleamed, their voices buzzed with pride, and their minds burned with curiosity about the galaxy's most infamous species, humans. At the center of the auditorium, a massive holo display showed the words, "The Human Ban, Lessons from the Past." The room stirred with laughter and whispered jokes. To most of the cadets, the idea of taking humans seriously was ridiculous. Humanity had been banned from the Council generations ago, cast out after a series of wars and defiant acts that no one fully understood anymore. To them, humans were the galaxy's old punchline, a warning, not a mystery. A tall, silver-skinned instructor stepped forward, his voice echoing smoothly through the hall. "Before we begin, tell me what you know about humans." Dozens of hands, or the alien equivalent, shot up. One cadet, her feathers tinted blue with youth, blurted, "They were primitive, violent, and emotional. They couldn't follow simple council law." The room burst into laughter. Another cadet, with crystalline eyes that flickered like stars, added, "They destroyed their own planet once, didn't they? How could anyone that reckless survive in the galactic age?" The instructor didn't smile. His tone was calm, almost too calm. "Is that what you were taught?" he asked. "That humans were foolish, dangerous, inferior?" The laughter faded, replaced with a quiet uncertainty. The cadets exchanged glances. For all their confidence, none had ever actually seen a human. They only knew the stories. How Earth fell silent, how human colonies vanished, how the Council erased them from history. Humans were treated like a myth. The instructor turned to the holo display and entered a code. "Then let's test that belief," he said. "This is a recovered Council recording, dated before the ban. It was sealed by order of the High Council itself. What you will see here has never been shown to cadets before." The lights dimmed. The screen flickered. Before the recording began, the cadets were still smirking. Some whispered bets about what they'd see, maybe a human war, maybe some savage ritual. To them, this was entertainment. But when the first image appeared, the laughter stopped. A human stood before a council chamber surrounded by towering alien delegates. His uniform was battered, his eyes heavy with exhaustion. Yet there was something in his voice, calm, steady, and piercingly human. He wasn't begging. He wasn't apologizing. He was warning them. "My people tried to follow your laws," the man said in the recording. "We tried to fit into your perfect order. But when your fleets came, when you bombed our colonies and called it containment, we saw the truth. You fear what you don't understand." The hall was utterly silent. Even the instructor's face was unreadable. The cadets leaned forward, the mockery forgotten. The human continued, his voice rising not with anger, but conviction. "You call us violent, but every species here was born from struggle. You call us emotional, yet it was emotion, love, grief, hope that carried us to the stars. You think banning us makes the galaxy safer, but it only makes it weaker." The recording paused, the image of the human frozen mid-sentence, eyes blazing with defiance. The instructor's voice cut through the heavy silence. "This," he said, "was recorded moments before the Council's final vote to exile humanity. What happened after is not in the archives. Until now." The cadets exchanged uneasy looks. Some shifted in their seats, suddenly unsure whether they wanted to see more. "Sir," one of them asked quietly, Did the humans attack the Council after this?" The instructor didn't answer. He simply played the next segment. The scene changed to chaos. The council chamber trembled, lights flickering, explosions echoed in the distance. Delegates shouted. The recording jolted as the camera turned toward the window, revealing a massive battle outside. But it wasn't a human fleet. It was something else. The instructor paused the footage again. "This," he said slowly, is why the truth about the human ban was buried. He gestured toward the frozen image. What you are about to see changed everything. It cost entire worlds their peace. And it began because no one listened to that man. The tension in the room was electric now. The arrogance that filled the cadets earlier was gone, replaced by an anxious curiosity. They weren't laughing anymore. The blue-feathered cadet who had mocked humans earlier whispered almost to herself. He wasn't wrong, was he? The instructor looked at her. No, he wasn't. He turned back to the screen, voice lower now, almost reverent. The humans didn't start the war that followed. They ended it, and the cost of that ending is the reason the council pretends they never existed. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few cadets glanced around as if expecting the council to appear right there and silence them. One whispered, "But that can't be true. The archives tell you what you're allowed to know," the instructor said sharply. This recording was hidden because it shows what the council feared most, that humans were not monsters, but mirrors. They reminded us of what we used to be before we built this fragile order. He pressed another command. The recording resumed. The human stood again, this time beside a broken console. He was bleeding, his voice quieter but still strong. "If you remember anything," he said, "remember this. Humanity doesn't vanish. We adapt. We endure. And someday, when your laws fail you, you'll call for us again." The recording cut to static. The hall remained silent for a long time. The cadets stared at the empty screen, trying to process what they'd seen. Finally, the instructor spoke. "You mock humans because it's easier than asking why the galaxy feared them. But every major advancement, every technology, every defense system was built on something humanity left behind. You owe your survival to the species you ridicule." He let that sink in before adding, "And now, after centuries, something strange is happening. Unidentified signals have been detected beyond the outer colonies, old human frequencies. The council says it's interference. I say..." He paused, looking over his students. "I say history is stirring again." The cadets exchanged nervous glances. The idea that humans might return after everything was almost unthinkable, and yet the instructor's tone carried a quiet certainty that unsettled them all. One cadet finally asked, "If humans come back, what will they do?" The instructor smiled faintly. "That," he said, "is what we're going to find out." As the lights brightened again, the cadets sat in uneasy silence, their laughter long gone. The once proud mockery of humanity had turned into something else, an echo of fear, curiosity, and respect. They didn't know it yet, but what they had seen was only the beginning. Outside the academy, in the cold void between stars, a faint transmission pulsed through the dark, ancient, human, and alive. It repeated the same words over and over, reaching across centuries of silence. "We're coming home." And when the cadets heard it for the first time, everything they thought they knew about humans would change forever. The next morning, the Galactic Academy buzzed with whispers. The mysterious recording had spread faster than anyone expected. Every cadet who had attended the lecture was talking about it, though never too loudly. Even in the wide marble corridors filled with the hum of holoscreens and the glow of alien glyphs, the name human carried a weight no one dared to say openly. It was as if just speaking it too boldly might summon something from the shadows of history. The instructor who had shown the recording had disappeared from the Academy's public schedule. His name was no longer listed in the teaching roster. His office lights stayed dark. The cadets who tried to ask about him were met with polite, vague answers from the administration. Some were told he'd been reassigned. Others heard he'd resigned overnight. But no one believed that. Not after what they had seen. In one of the dormitory towers overlooking the crystal spires of the Capitol, 3 cadets sat around a flickering holotable. The blue-feathered cadet, who had mocked humans just the day before, looked uneasy. Her name was Lyra, and her wings drooped slightly as she stared at the paused image of the human on the small projector. "He didn't look like a monster," she said softly. "He looked tired, like someone who'd already lost too much." Beside her, a cadet from the crystalline worlds named Vesk tapped the table nervously, his light-filled eyes dimming. "It doesn't make sense," he said. "If what that instructor showed us was true, then the Council's entire history is a lie. Why hide it for so long? Why erase them?" A third cadet, taller and quieter, leaned back in his chair. His species didn't show emotion easily, but his voice carried a strange tension. "Maybe because the humans weren't destroyed," he said. "Maybe they walked away." The others stared at him, confused. "Walked away? From the Council?" Lyra repeated. "No one leaves the Council." He shrugged. "They did." The thought lingered like a spark in dry air. Could it be true? Could humanity, banished, erased, forgotten, still exist somewhere beyond the mapped stars? The official record said their colonies had fallen one by one, crushed under the Council's combined fleets. But those same records also claimed the humans had started the war, and now that seemed far less certain. Lyra leaned closer to the hollow image of the human, her feathers reflecting the pale blue light. "Look at his eyes," she said quietly. "That's not someone afraid of losing. That's someone who already decided what comes next." Vesk frowned. "You're starting to sound like that instructor." "Maybe he was right," Lyra said. "Maybe the Council feared them because they couldn't control them." The door hissed open suddenly, and all three froze. A dark uniformed officer stood in the doorway, his presence cold and formal. "Cadets," he said evenly, "the Dean would like a word with you. Now." The three exchanged nervous glances, their hollow projector snapping shut. They followed the officer through the long, echoing corridors, each step filled with silent dread. The Academy's inner halls were lined with banners from every Council species, symbols of unity and peace. But as they passed them now, the words engraved beneath those banners, "Harmony through order," felt hollow. When they entered the Dean's chamber, the air was heavy with authority. The Dean, a tall being of shimmering gold skin, sat behind a desk that pulsed with quiet light. He regarded them for a long moment before speaking. "You attended Instructor Thalen's lecture yesterday." "Yes, sir," Lyra said quickly. "And you viewed an unauthorized recording," the Dean continued. "A restricted historical file." The cadets exchanged uneasy looks. "We didn't know it was restricted," Vesk said. The Dean's gaze hardened. "You know now. That file was sealed for a reason. What you saw was not verified truth, but propaganda left behind by a dangerous species. Humanity was exiled because they threatened the stability of the galaxy. Nothing more." Lyra hesitated. "But sir, the human in the video, he wasn't—" "Enough," the Dean said sharply. The lights in the room dimmed for a moment before settling again. "You are cadets, not historians. Your duty is to learn, not to question what the Council has preserved." The officer beside the door watched them closely. The unspoken warning was clear. "Yes, sir," they murmured in unison. "Good," the Dean said. His tone softened slightly, but his eyes didn't. "Return to your studies, and forget what you saw. The Council has maintained peace for 1,000 years. Don't let the ghosts of the past distract you from the future." When they left the office, none of them spoke for a long time. The corridors seemed quieter now, the glow of the Academy colder. It wasn't until they reached the edge of the dorm wing that Vesk finally whispered. "He was lying." Lyra nodded. "He knew something. You could hear it in his voice." The tall cadet looked out the window toward the night sky. The stars glittered like cold dust, but one faint light blinked in an unusual rhythm, steady, patterned human. "If that transmission was real," he said quietly, "then someone out there is trying to reach us." That night they couldn't sleep. The recording kept replaying in their minds. The human's defiant voice, the chaos in the council chamber, the final words. "We adapt. We endure." It felt less like history and more like a warning meant for them. A week later, the Academy announced that all lectures on the human ban were suspended pending review. Every digital archive mentioning humanity was sealed under high-level council authority. Even the internal network began to erase search results related to Earth. It was as if the species had never existed. But the cadets couldn't forget. Lyra, Vesk, and the Tall One began meeting in secret. They dug through old maintenance channels in the Academy's databanks, looking for unfiltered historical logs. Late at night, in the hum of data conduits, they found fragments, images of old starships marked with a simple blue and white insignia, recordings of human voices mixed with static, and maps leading to systems that no longer appeared on any chart. The more they uncovered, the clearer the picture became. Humanity hadn't vanished. They had left on their own terms. One recovered transmission was almost intact. It showed a group of humans aboard a ship, their faces tired but resolute. "If this reaches anyone," the speaker said, "know that we're not gone. We're rebuilding, out where the council won't find us." The message ended abruptly, followed by coordinates that didn't match any known region. Lyra stared at the data, her feathers trembling. "This can't be a coincidence. The same frequency as that signal the instructor mentioned." Vesk's eyes glowed faintly as he processed the coordinates. "It's in the uncharted sectors. The council doesn't patrol there." The tall cadet looked up slowly. "Then that's where they went." None of them spoke for several seconds. The realization was almost too large to grasp. Humanity, exiled, erased, and presumed extinct, had survived. And if the signal they'd detected recently was truly from them, it meant one thing: humans were returning. They knew they couldn't tell anyone. The Academy would silence them, just like they had silenced the instructor. But the need to know the truth burned stronger than fear. "We have to find out what's really out there," Lyra said. "If the humans are alive, if they're sending signals again, we can't just ignore it." Vesk hesitated. "Do you realize what that means? If the council learns we're investigating this, they'll expel us, or worse." She looked at him firmly. "Then we don't tell them." Outside the dorm window, the stars shimmered like distant memories. The faint human signal continued to pulse through the void, repeating the same steady message, each transmission stronger than the last, and far beyond the council's reach. In a dark corner of the galaxy where no law held power, something stirred. A fleet was awakening. Old human ships with worn insignias and battle scars, powered by technology that the rest of the galaxy had long forgotten. Their engines burned quietly as they followed a single path, heading toward council space. Back at the Academy, Lyra closed her eyes and whispered the words that had haunted her since the lecture. "We're coming home." None of them knew what awaited them. None could imagine what humanity had become. But they all felt it. The sense that the galaxy was on the edge of something vast and unstoppable. The cadets didn't realize it yet, but their search for the truth would soon make them part of the story they were trying to uncover. And when the humans returned, nothing in the galaxy would ever be the same again. The following days passed under an uneasy silence at the Galactic Academy. The topic of humanity had become forbidden. Teachers avoided questions. The network filters grew tighter. Even the word Earth triggered a quiet system warning. But the more the council tried to erase, the more curiosity spread. Whispers moved through the corridors like sparks in dry air. Rumors of the instructor's disappearance, talk of hidden files, and quiet discussions about the mysterious human signal detected in the outer colonies. Lyra and her friends kept their secret meetings at night, far beneath the main halls in the abandoned lower levels where the old ventilation systems hummed softly. There, surrounded by darkness and the faint blue glow of their portable holoscreens, they pieced together fragments of data that the Council had buried. Every file they uncovered led to more questions. Every discovery made the picture of humanity more complex. One night, Lyra found a partially corrupted Council log, one that hadn't been purged yet. The entry was written by a Council strategist during the final years before the human ban. "They don't fight like us," the strategist had written. "They adapt faster than any known species. They study our tactics during the battle itself. The more we push them, the more unpredictable they become." Vesk read it aloud twice, his crystalline eyes flickering nervously. "That doesn't sound like a violent species," he said slowly. "It sounds like one that refuses to give up." The tall cadet, now the group's quiet leader, leaned closer to the display. "That's why the Council feared them," he said. "Not because they were dangerous, but because they couldn't be controlled." Before they could discuss further, their holoscreens dimmed at once. A signal interference, then a sharp sound cut through the static, 3 steady pulses, followed by silence. The same pattern they'd heard before, the human signal. Lyra's feathers ruffled slightly. "It's closer," she whispered. "The frequency's stronger than last week." Vesk checked the readings. "It's being relayed through multiple systems. Someone, or something, is helping it move toward the core sectors." The tall cadet frowned. "Then humans aren't just sending a message. They're testing the Council's defenses." They didn't realize that in another part of the galaxy, deep in Council territory, their activities were being quietly tracked. The Council's intelligence division had detected unauthorized data access at the Academy. Someone was digging into restricted history files. Someone knew about the transmission. In a dark chamber at the Council Citadel, a group of senior officials watched the same faint signal flicker on their screens. The room was filled with silence, except for the low hum of holographic projectors. One of the officials, a towering being with golden armor, spoke first. "Are we certain it's human?" A technician hesitated. "The frequency matches archived Earth transmissions from the pre-ban era. It's been repeating for weeks." "Origin?" "Uncharted space, near the Orion fracture." The golden figure's expression hardened. So after centuries of silence, they decide to speak again. "Why now?" No one answered. The question hung heavy in the air. "Find out who's accessing restricted files," the official said finally. "If the Academy has been compromised, handle it quietly." Back at the Academy, Lyra and her friends had no idea that they were now under surveillance. They continued gathering data, building a clearer map of where the human signal was coming from. Their latest findings pointed toward an old trade route that had been abandoned after the ban. "It's like they're following their own old routes," Vesk said. "Every relay point matches a human colony site that used to exist before the war." Lyra stared at the glowing map. "Then the Council never destroyed them all," she whispered. "They just stopped looking." That thought settled over them like a storm cloud. If humanity had survived, if they had grown in the shadows of uncharted space, then no one knew what kind of civilization they had become. One evening, while reviewing the data alone, Lyra noticed something strange, an encrypted symbol repeating in the signal's pulse pattern. She decoded it slowly, layer by layer, until a message appeared in Old Terran English. "We remember." Her breath caught. It wasn't just a transmission. It was a message meant for someone inside Council space, someone who would understand. When she showed the others, their reactions were mixed. Vesk's voice was barely a whisper. "If they're saying that, they're not just reaching out. They're watching. Maybe they know what the Council did," Lyra said. "Maybe they've been waiting all this time." The tall cadet's expression darkened. "If that's true, then we're in danger just by knowing this." They were right. Within hours, the Academy's main systems detected the unauthorized decryption. Security drones began sweeping the halls. Students were questioned. Records were searched. The three cadets wiped their terminals, destroyed the old logs, and went into hiding within the maintenance tunnels. But it was too late. The council already knew who they were. That night, the sky above the Academy shimmered with silent ships, black, unmarked, and hovering like shadows. The cadets didn't see them, but they felt the tension in the air. Even the Academy staff moved quietly, avoiding eye contact. Meanwhile, far from the capital, in the cold expanse of uncharted space, the true source of the transmission drifted among the stars. It wasn't a satellite or a probe. It was a ship, a human ship, scarred and ancient, but still alive. Inside, a small crew monitored the signal's spread, their faces lit by the dim glow of blue screens. "Council's picking it up," one of them said. "They're reacting faster than expected." A man leaned forward, studying the readings. His eyes were steady, his expression calm. "Good," he said. "Let them panic. They've forgotten too much." The woman beside him adjusted the controls. "You really think they'll listen this time?" He didn't answer immediately. "They won't have a choice," he said finally. "They buried the truth. We're just digging it back up." Back at the Academy, Lyra and her friends tried to plan their next move. "We need proof," Vesk said. "Something that can't be denied. If we can find an old human ship or a real message, maybe others will listen." Lyra nodded. "There's one place left," she said quietly. "The Academy's deep archives. The original human contact files should still be stored there. If the Council didn't destroy them, that's where they'd be." The tall cadet hesitated. "Those archives are restricted. Entry requires high-level clearance." "Then we'll find another way in," she said. The decision was made. The following night, they moved through the lower corridors, avoiding patrol drones and surveillance fields. The deeper they went, the colder and quieter the halls became. The lights flickered with age. Dust floated in the still air. It felt like walking through the bones of forgotten history. When they finally reached the locked archive door, Lyra activated a small decryption device she had built from stolen components. The lock glowed red, then flickered to green. The door slid open with a low hiss, revealing rows upon rows of sealed containers. Inside each were data cores older than the Academy itself. They searched for hours, moving carefully through the silent room. Then, hidden behind a stack of damaged storage crates, Vesk found a small black case labeled simply, "Earth, Final Report." Lyra opened it with trembling hands. Inside was a single data shard. She inserted it into her portable reader, and a hologram flickered to life. The image showed a council commander standing before a fleet of burning ships. "Operation Silence complete," he said coldly. "All remaining human colonies neutralized. Surviving ships fled beyond mapped sectors. Recommend full historical purge to prevent cultural contamination." The hologram froze, and Lyra felt her chest tighten. "So it was true," she whispered. "They didn't ban humanity. They exterminated them." Vesk shook his head. "No, not all. The message proves some survived. They escaped before the purge." The tall cadet's voice was low but steady. "And now they're coming back." The realization hung between them, heavy and frightening. The Council had lied for generations, and now the truth was breaking through the cracks. The human signal wasn't just a ghost from the past. It was a warning. Before they could copy the file, the door behind them hissed open. A squad of black-armored guards filled the doorway, their weapons raised. The cadets froze. "Step away from the archive," the lead guard ordered. Lyra clutched the data shard close to her chest. "We know what you did," she said, voice trembling but defiant. "The galaxy deserves to know too." The guard's visor reflected the flicker of the hologram. "You don't understand what you found," he said. And if you value your lives, you'll forget it. But before anyone could move, the lights in the room flickered, and the entire academy shook. A low alarm echoed through the walls, an emergency signal. Vesk turned to the window slit just in time to see streaks of light cutting through the sky. Ships, unknown and unregistered, had just entered orbit. The human transmission had stopped, and something new had begun. The ground trembled as another distant explosion shook the Academy's foundations. The alarms howled through the corridors, their red lights flashing like frantic hearts. Lyra could barely hear herself think. The guards were shouting orders, the emergency lights stuttered, and through the noise, the unmistakable roar of engines echoed from the sky above. Whatever was happening outside wasn't a drill. It was something far bigger. Vesk darted toward the console, trying to stabilize the data shard before it was lost. "The files are still copying," he shouted. "If we leave now, we lose everything." The lead guard turned, his visor glinting red in the flashing lights. "You don't understand what's coming," he growled. "This isn't a council response. This is something else." Lyra's heart pounded. "Then who is it?" The guard hesitated, and that pause said everything. The academy trembled again, harder this time. A ceiling beam cracked and fell, scattering sparks across the archive floor. The guards turned toward the exit, weapons drawn, barking orders into their comms. But all they got back was static. The tall cadet grabbed Lyra's arm. "We have to move!" "I can't," she shouted, clutching the data shard as Vesk frantically tried to finish the transfer. "This file is proof. The galaxy has to see it." The alarms suddenly cut off, replaced by a deep rolling hum that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was low, mechanical, and unmistakably alive. The guards froze mid-step. The hum grew louder, deeper, vibrating through the floor, through the walls, through their bones. Then, for just a second, everything went silent. When the lights came back on, they flickered blue instead of red. The Academy systems were no longer under Council control. "Power override," Vesk whispered. "Something's taking over the network." The holoscreens around them flickered to life on their own. Static filled the air, and then, through the distortion, a human voice broke through. "This is Captain Elias Gray of the Terran Exodus Fleet," the voice said, steady and calm despite the faint static. "To all Council installations, stand down. We are not here to conquer. We are here to remind you what you tried to forget." The guards looked at one another, panic flashing across faces usually trained to stay expressionless. One of them whispered, "It can't be real. They were extinct." Lyra stared at the screen, her pulse racing. "They're real," she said quietly. "They never died." The voice continued. "To those who still believe in truth, do not fear us. Humanity returns not in vengeance, but in memory. You will see what we've become." Then the signal cut off. Outside, the sound of engines grew louder. The cadets and guards rushed to the nearest viewport. Through the rising smoke and glowing sky, they saw them, ships like nothing the galaxy had seen before. They weren't large or grand like Council fleets. They were lean, weathered, and scarred by time. Yet they moved with precision and strength, glowing faintly blue as they descended into orbit. Vesk stared in awe. Those are human ships." The lead guard activated his communicator again, desperate. "This is Security Command. We have unauthorized ships entering planetary orbit. Repeat, unknown fleet, no Council ID." But there was still only static. The tall cadet turned to Lyra. "They're jamming communications. The Council can't hear us." The ground shuddered again as something massive entered the atmosphere. The ships weren't attacking. They were forming a perimeter, surrounding the planet without firing a single shot. Whatever humanity wanted, it wasn't destruction. Not yet. Inside the Academy, panic erupted. Cadets rushed through the halls, instructors barked orders, and security drones zipped overhead, trying to maintain order. But the air was thick with fear. For the first time in generations, the great council world of Solara felt vulnerable. Lyra, Vesk, and their companion ducked into a side passage, avoiding the crowds. The data shard pulsed faintly in Lyra's hand, as if reacting to the signal from the ships above. "We need to get this to the main communication array," she said. "If we can broadcast the file before they shut everything down, everyone will know the truth." Vesk looked uncertain. "If the humans see the transmission, they might think we're part of the council. They could shut us down too." "Then we make sure they know who we are," Lyra said firmly. "We're not with the council. We're the ones who listened." They sprinted through the dim corridors, dodging debris and frightened cadets. Outside, the sky had turned a strange metallic color from the glow of the human ships. The hum of their engines echoed across the planet like a pulse, steady, confident, unbroken. When they reached the communications spire, the entrance was guarded. Council troops had sealed it, forming a line with their weapons raised. "Access restricted!" one of them shouted as the trio approached. Lyra didn't slow down. "We have evidence!" she called out, raising the data shard. "Proof the council lied about humanity! You have to let us through!" The guard's eyes narrowed behind his visor. "Turn back now." Before they could argue, the air crackled with static again. Every screen, every comm channel, every piece of equipment around them lit up with the same message, white letters on a black background. "We remember." Gasps erupted from the crowd. The guards hesitated, their discipline cracking. The entire spire began to hum, the human signal overriding all council frequencies. The defensive drones froze mid-air, systems hijacked. Then a projection flickered to life above the city. It was the same man from the ancient recording, the one who had stood before the council centuries ago. His image was older now, worn by time, but unmistakable. "This message is for the children of the council," the projection said. His voice was calm, almost kind. "You were told we were gone, that we burned our world and vanished into the void. You believed your peace was built on order, but your peace was built on silence." The crowd gathered below, staring up in disbelief. Instructors, cadets, guards, none of them moved. "You buried the truth," the hologram continued. "You erased the names of those who refused to kneel. You feared what made us human, our defiance, our compassion, our will to endure. And now you fear that same fire again." Vesk whispered, "It's the same man from the lecture, the one in the old council video." Lyra couldn't look away. "He's alive." The hologram's expression softened. "We don't seek revenge. We seek understanding. But understand this. If the galaxy chooses silence again, humanity will not stand by." The image flickered, and for a heartbeat, his eyes seemed to meet Lyra's through the projection. "To those who still believe in truth, we are listening." The image vanished, and the sky filled with light. Dozens of human ships descended through the clouds, engines glowing faintly. They didn't fire, didn't threaten. They simply hovered, waiting. The council fleet scrambled into orbit, but they were slow. The humans had the advantage. Every defensive network was already compromised by their old systems. The galaxy's greatest power was being undone not by force, but by memory. Back inside the spire, Lyra uploaded the data shard into the primary console. "Broadcasting now," she said, her voice shaking. "Every colony, every outpost, they'll all see this." The console flickered, and then the same human message began spreading through the stars. In a matter of minutes, thousands of worlds would know the truth, that humanity had never been destroyed. They had been waiting, building, remembering. But before Lyra could finish the transmission, the spire lights dimmed again. The floor shook violently. Vesk clutched the rail as the sound of impact thundered across the city. "They're landing!" he gasped. Through the wide observation window, they saw it. A massive human ship descending through the clouds, larger than any they had seen before. Its hull was black and gleaming, with faint white letters barely visible on its side. Exodus Dawn. The tall cadets stared, frozen. "They're not just sending a message anymore," he said. "They've come back." The ship descended slowly, casting a long shadow across the city. Every being on the surface stopped to watch. The engines flared once, then went silent as it came to rest just above the council plaza. Lyra's pulse quickened. "They're here to talk," she said softly. "They have to be." But then the main doors of the ship began to open. A bright white light spilled out, and figures started to emerge, human silhouettes against the glow. The crowd gasped. The guards around the spire raised their weapons instinctively, but no one fired. The tension was unbearable. The humans walked forward slowly, calm, unarmed, their expressions unreadable. Lyra pressed her hand to the glass, unable to look away. "After all this time," she whispered, "they finally came home." The lead human at the front stopped, lifting his gaze toward the sky. His voice echoed through the still air, amplified by unseen speakers. "Council of Worlds," he called out, his tone firm but not hostile. "We need to talk." And in that charged, breathless moment, the galaxy seemed to hold itself still, every species, every world, every secret, waiting to see what humanity would say next. The silence in the training hall felt heavier than before. Every cadet sat frozen, their eyes glued to the holographic feed that still flickered above the dais. The recording had ended, but the air pulsed with something raw: fear, disbelief, and a touch of awe. The humans in that ancient footage hadn't been the monsters the cadets were taught to mock. They were something else entirely: fierce, resolute, and terrifyingly determined. But what none of them realized yet was that the recording wasn't over. It had only been paused. Just as the instructor stepped forward to shut down the console, the display came alive again on its own. A strange shimmer rippled through the air, and a voice, faint but clear, echoed through the hall. It wasn't alien. It was human. "If you're watching this," the voice said, calm yet heavy with meaning, "then you found what we left behind, and you're not ready for what comes next." Gasps filled the room. The cadets exchanged glances, some whispering in disbelief, others too stunned to speak. The instructor barked for silence, but even his voice carried unease. The message continued, accompanied by flickering images, humans standing among burning ships, broken battlefields, and the banners of fallen empires. "They mocked us," the voice went on, "but we survived every extinction they wished upon us. We learned, we adapted, and we remembered." Then the feed cut out. The room stayed still for several seconds before chaos erupted. Questions flew in every direction. What did it mean? Was it a trick? Why would humans leave such a message hidden within military archives? The instructor's tone hardened as he ordered everyone to stand down, but the tension refused to fade. Something deeper had shifted. The mocking tone that once filled these halls whenever humans were mentioned was gone, replaced by something that felt uncomfortably close to respect or fear. Later that evening, in the academy dormitory, the conversation didn't stop. A small group of cadets gathered around a dim holographic projector, replaying fragments of the recording they'd secretly copied. They analyzed every frame, every word, looking for hidden clues. The one who led the group, a young alien with silver markings down his temples, leaned closer to the screen. "They weren't just fighting," he murmured. "They were trying to warn us." His friend scoffed, trying to hide his own nervousness. "Warn us about what? They're extinct. Their wars ended centuries ago." But another cadet shook her head. "No. Look at the way the message appeared. It was triggered by access. Someone buried it deep. Maybe they didn't want it to be found until now. That idea sent a chill through the group. The thought that humans might have planned something even after their supposed banishment made their skin crawl. They'd been taught humans were reckless, emotional, and unpredictable, yet what they saw in that message wasn't chaos. It was precision. It was intent. As the night wore on, the cadets found themselves drawn into a mystery that was quickly spiraling beyond their understanding. Every time they rewatched the footage, new details emerged: symbols on armor, coded phrases in the background noise, and coordinates barely visible at the edge of the hologram. One coordinate stood out: a place forbidden to all Academy students, the ruins on the far side of the moon orbiting the central world. That was where the Galactic Council had supposedly erased the last traces of human presence. The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire through the Academy. Some claimed the humans had left behind secret weapons. Others whispered that they had hidden a fleet somewhere in deep space. The Council tried to suppress the gossip, but that only made it worse. The cadets' curiosity turned into quiet rebellion. Every lesson about human arrogance now felt hollow. The more they learned, the less the old stories made sense. Then came the second shock. A new transmission appeared in the Council's data network, encrypted, ancient, and undeniably human. It bore the same voice from the recording. "If the Council still stands," it said, "remember this: what you fear in us was always within you." The message spread faster than any containment order could stop it. Even those who despised humans felt a stirring of unease. The Academy's leadership called for an emergency assembly. Instructors and officers filled the Great Hall, their faces grim. They ordered the cadets to forget what they had seen, to delete any recordings, and to report anyone who tried to investigate further. But suppression only deepened the mystery. Behind closed doors, even the senior staff whispered, "Why now? Why would a centuries-old human signal suddenly reactivate?" In the following days, strange things began happening across the Academy's systems. Holographic projectors flickered with human symbols. AI assistants stuttered out fragments of old human languages. Some said they saw ghostly figures in the archives, images that appeared only for a second, then vanished. Others dismissed it as glitches, but deep down, no one was sure anymore. The cadets from the study group couldn't let it go. They began piecing together the clues from the coordinates, comparing them to old maps and restricted databases. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that the Council's version of history was incomplete. The humans hadn't been completely erased. They had disappeared on their own terms, and whatever they had left behind was meant to be found. One night, unable to sleep, the silver-marked cadet returned to the deserted hall where it all began. The console that had first played the recording was sealed off, but the faint hum of power still lingered. He placed his hand on the surface and whispered softly, "What did you want us to see?" To his shock, the console lit up again. This time, the hologram that appeared wasn't a battle or a speech. It was a single image, a human standing beneath the stars, looking back at the galaxy. The message that followed was short but chilling. "We are not gone. We're waiting." The cadet stumbled back, his pulse racing. The recording vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving him staring into the darkness, unsure if it had really happened. But the next morning, news swept through the Academy that a signal, human in origin, had been detected on the outer edge of the system. Weak, distorted, but unmistakably real. Panic rippled through the ranks. The Council ordered immediate silence, but the rumors were uncontrollable. Some believed the humans had returned. Others feared it was something worse, an automated system, a remnant of their war technology, awakening after centuries. The Academy became a place of tension and paranoia, every whisper carrying weight. The silver-marked cadet tried to tell his friends what he saw, but they were too afraid to listen. Even so, he couldn't shake the feeling that the message had been meant for him, that somehow the humans had known someone would find it. And now, he felt eyes on him wherever he went, as if something unseen was watching. Then, one night, a new alert echoed across the station. The holographic sky above the academy flickered, and a massive signal burst through the communications grid. It wasn't local. It wasn't even from the same sector. But every frequency translated the same thing, a single phrase repeated over and over: "Remember Earth." The words echoed through every corridor, every speaker, every console. The cadets froze. The instructors shouted for lockdown. But deep inside the academy's data core, the recording that started it all began to play again, this time unbidden, unstoppable. And for the first time in generations, the galaxy realized that maybe the humans had never truly left. The academy was chaos. Lights flickered across every corridor, alarms blared, and holographic panels flashed the same haunting message: "Remember Earth." It was everywhere, repeated in every known language, echoing across the station's internal comms as if the past itself had come alive. The cadets ran in confusion, while instructors barked orders that no one seemed to follow. The council had cut off external communications, but whatever signal the humans had sent was already inside the system, rewriting everything in real time. In the command center, the senior officers argued in hushed panic. They were trained for every kind of crisis: mutiny, invasion, reactor failure. But not this. Not ghosts from a species the galaxy had supposedly erased centuries ago. A nervous technician reported that the signal wasn't just broadcasting, it was unlocking files sealed under the Council's highest security level. And worse, those files weren't alien. They were human. The silver-marked cadet and his small group of friends hid in a maintenance corridor, watching the chaos unfold through the holofeeds. "They're trying to contain it," one of them whispered, "but it's spreading faster than they can shut it down." The others looked to him, uncertain what to do next. He could feel the same pull he had felt since seeing that first message, the quiet, unnerving sense that somehow this was meant for him. Then came a low rumble through the deck. The lights dimmed to emergency red as the entire academy seemed to tremble. The intercom crackled with static before a voice, calm, deliberate, unmistakably human, broke through. "If you've forgotten who we were," it said, "then you've forgotten who you are." The message was followed by a flood of images: human ships sailing through ancient stars, cities rebuilt from ashes, soldiers clasping hands with alien allies long since erased from the records. It wasn't a threat. It was history, one the Council had buried. The cadets watched, silent, as truth reshaped everything they'd believed. The humans hadn't been monsters. They'd been outcasts, not destroyed, but banished and erased to maintain a fragile illusion of peace. The Council had built its order on a lie. The recordings showed the early years after the war, the humans negotiating, offering technology, and warning the Council of something approaching from deep space. But instead of listening, the Council had labeled them dangerous and forced them into exile. Suddenly, it all made sense. The warnings, the coordinates, the strange timing of the signal. The humans hadn't vanished. They had gone beyond the known frontier, far enough to be forgotten, waiting for the moment when the galaxy would need to remember. The silver-marked cadet felt his chest tighten. "They tried to warn them," he said softly, "and now they're back." Before anyone could answer, the deck shook again. A blinding flash filled the corridor as the holographic walls around them shimmered and dissolved into a new image: space. But not as they knew it. In the black void beyond the Academy's orbit, a shape was emerging. Massive, angular, and unmistakably human in design. The system's sensors flared to life, identifying hundreds of signatures, ships, old models, yet far beyond anything still in use. The command center scrambled to respond. "All cadets to defensive stations!" shouted the intercom, but even the officers didn't sound convinced. The incoming fleet wasn't attacking. It was just there, holding position, as if waiting. Then, through the static, another voice cut through. Calm, resolute, human. "This is Captain Halden of the Terran Vanguard. We come not to wage war, but to remind the galaxy of what was promised." The words hit like thunder. The cadets looked to one another in disbelief. A living human voice. Not a recording, not a fragment. Alive. The Council scrambled to respond, ordering their fleets to form a blockade, but no one fired. Every system, every weapon platform, every defensive array froze under the same interference that had flooded the Academy. The humans had disabled them remotely. It was complete control, executed with terrifying precision. On the Academy's central display, Captain Halden's face appeared. He was older, his features sharp but weary. Behind him, the stars burned brighter than they had in the holograms. "For centuries," he said, "you've told our story without us. You erased our names, our cities, and our sacrifices. But history has a way of surviving. We warned you once, and now the storm we saw coming is here." The feed changed again, showing massive energy distortions forming beyond the system's edge. It wasn't the humans attacking. It was something else, vast, predatory, and alien even to the cadets' eyes. The sensors labeled it as unknown mass approaching. The humans hadn't returned for revenge. They had come back to protect the galaxy from the threat they had once tried to warn everyone about. Panic turned to silence. Every cadet, every officer, watched as the human fleet began to move, forming defensive lines in perfect synchronization. The Council's ships hesitated, waiting for orders that never came. For the first time in living memory, the fate of the galaxy depended on the very species they had cast out. The silver-marked cadet turned to his group. "They knew," he said quietly. "They came back, because they never stopped believing we'd need them." The sky outside the Academy flared with light as the battle began. The unknown force struck first, shapes of shadow and energy that defied understanding. Human ships responded instantly, their weapons igniting like burning stars. The Council fleets joined moments later, following the humans' lead. Together, they held the line, the echoes of ancient wars replaying across the void. From the Academy's observation deck, the cadets watched the spectacle in stunned silence. The humans fought with unmatched precision, every maneuver calculated, every sacrifice deliberate. It was no longer about pride or vengeance. It was survival. And for the first time, the cadets understood what the humans had always meant by resilience. Hours later, when the last of the unknown attackers vanished into the darkness, the silence that followed felt sacred. The human fleet remained in orbit, silent but unyielding. Captain Halden's face appeared one final time on the central display. "You called us reckless," he said softly. "Maybe we were. But when the galaxy forgets what it means to fight for life, someone has to remember." Then the signal faded, and the fleet vanished, slipping into faster-than-light travel without leaving a trace. In the aftermath, the Council released a statement claiming cooperation and mutual victory. But everyone in the Academy knew the truth. The humans hadn't returned to reclaim power. They had returned to remind the galaxy of its soul. Days passed, and repairs began. Yet something lingered, a quiet understanding that everything had changed. The cadets who once mocked the name of human now spoke it with respect. The silver-marked cadet stood again before the dark console where it all began. The hologram was silent now, but as he brushed his fingers across its surface, a faint pulse of light appeared. One final message flickered to life, only for him, a simple phrase written in human script. "Every civilization forgets, the strong remember." He smiled faintly, a mix of awe and sadness washing over him. The humans had vanished once again, but their presence echoed in every system, every mind and every heart that had seen the truth. The galaxy would never see them the same way again. And just as he turned to leave, the console blinked once more. For a brief second, a map appeared, coordinates far beyond the edge of the known universe. Then it disappeared. He froze, realizing what it meant. The humans weren't gone. They were building something out there, something waiting for the next time the galaxy would forget. And this time, he thought, maybe the galaxy would be ready to listen. The Academy felt different after that day. The corridors that once echoed with laughter and pride now carried a quiet reverence. Every cadet walked a little slower, spoke a little softer, as if the very air held the weight of what they had seen. The humans, those strange emotional beings they had been taught to mock, had returned from the shadows, fought for the galaxy's survival, and then vanished again without asking for recognition. The silence they left behind said more than any speech ever could. The silver-marked cadet stood by one of the observation windows overlooking the stars. For the first time, he understood why humans had been so unpredictable, because they cared too much. Their strength hadn't come from technology or numbers, but from something harder to define: conviction. They had carried pain, loss, and defiance across centuries, and still, when called by crisis, they had come back to help those who had exiled them. That truth humbled him more than any lesson the Academy had ever offered. Classes resumed after a few days, though no one pretended things were normal. The instructors avoided direct questions about the human fleet or the mysterious threat it had fought. Official reports downplayed the incident as an unidentified cosmic disturbance. But the cadets knew better. They had seen the human ships, heard their captain's voice, and felt that strange, unshakable presence that came with their return. The council could rewrite the records again, but this time, memory had spread too far. People were talking, quietly but persistently. In the dormitories, cadets shared fragments of the recording that had started it all. Some had copied the human voice message, spreading it from station to station across the network. It became almost a whisper of rebellion, a reminder that history was never as simple as it seemed. And every time the phrase, "Remember Earth," appeared on a console or in a message thread, someone somewhere stopped to think. One evening, while reviewing his coursework, the silver-marked cadet received a private data packet. It was encrypted with an old code, a pattern that didn't belong to the Academy or the Council. When he opened it, a hologram appeared, flickering with static. The face that appeared was unmistakably human. "You found the coordinates," the voice said. "Good. That means you're one of the few still willing to look for truth." The message was short, but it carried a sense of purpose. "If you want to understand who we were, follow the signal. We left more than warnings. We left hope." He sat frozen for a long time, staring at the coordinates that appeared at the end of the message, the same ones that had flashed on the console days earlier. He didn't know if it was meant for him personally or for anyone curious enough to keep digging, but it stirred something deep within him, a need to see for himself what the humans had left behind. When he brought the idea to his friends, most hesitated. "It's forbidden space," one said quietly. "The council would expel us if we're caught." But another cadet shook her head. "They already lied once. Maybe it's time we stop letting them tell us what's real." And so they decided to go, not as rebels, not as heroes, but as seekers of truth. They borrowed a small transport vessel under the guise of a training mission and set their course for the edge of the system, toward the coordinates the humans had left. The journey took days, the silence of space pressing in on them like a heavy blanket. They passed through forgotten sectors, abandoned outposts, and stretches of empty black void where even light seemed hesitant to travel. When they finally reached their destination, what they saw stole their breath away. It wasn't a planet or a station. It was something far greater. Suspended in the darkness was a massive structure shaped like a ring, rotating slowly around a dim star. The architecture was unmistakably human, yet it carried traces of other designs, alien influences woven into its form. It was a monument, a sanctuary, and a message all at once. As they approached, the ship's sensors picked up faint energy readings. A dormant beacon activated, projecting a soft blue light that filled their cockpit. Then a voice spoke, not a live transmission, but a recording, rich with emotion. To those who seek us, know this. We never left the galaxy. We simply gave it time to learn. Every world that mocks what it doesn't understand eventually needs what it once rejected. That's not vengeance. That's the cycle of understanding. The silver-marked cadet felt his throat tighten. He realized then that this wasn't just a human artifact. It was a lesson left behind. The humans had built something to endure, something that would remind future generations of their existence long after they were gone. A testament to their resilience and their hope that the galaxy might one day be ready to understand them. Inside the ring, they found empty halls lined with murals depicting human history, not the sanitized version from the Council's records, but raw, unfiltered moments of struggle and triumph, children playing among ruins, scientists rebuilding worlds, soldiers defending strangers. The art told a single story, that humanity's strength came not from domination, but from endurance. They survived because they refused to stop believing that things could get better. As they explored deeper, they found one final chamber. At its center stood a simple stone engraved with words in 100 languages. Translated, it read, "We are the sum of every choice to rise again. No weapons, no threats, just truth." The group stood in silence, absorbing the meaning. They realized that the humans hadn't left this place to be worshipped or feared. They had left it as a reminder that the galaxy's survival depended on empathy and courage as much as it did on power. The message was both humble and powerful, and it was meant to be shared. When they returned to the academy, the cadets didn't hide what they'd found. They presented the recordings, the images, and the translations to their instructors. At first, the faculty tried to suppress it, but the data had already spread. Within days, the entire network was flooded with the message of the ring. People everywhere began to see the humans differently, not as reckless warmongers, but as beings who had carried the weight of hope through endless darkness. The Council could no longer deny it. Quietly, they lifted the centuries-old human ban. Officially, they called it a review of historical inaccuracies. Unofficially, it was an apology written in silence. Across the galaxy, whispers grew into conversations, and conversations into change. Monuments once dedicated to the Council's triumphs began to include names long erased. For the first time, humanity's story was being told honestly. The silver-marked cadet watched the change unfold from afar, feeling something like peace. The galaxy was still far from perfect, but it had remembered what it had lost, the very spirit the humans had fought to preserve. One night, as he gazed out at the stars, his ship's console flickered. A small message appeared, just 2 words written in the same human code he'd seen before. "Thank you." He smiled quietly, unsure if it was real or just his imagination. But either way, he whispered back into the vast, starlit dark, "We remember." And somewhere beyond the edge of the known galaxy, among the drifting lights and forgotten worlds, a faint human signal pulsed once more, steady, patient, waiting for the next generation to find it. Because that was what humans did. They endured. They reminded the universe that even in the coldest corners of space, hope could still burn bright. And this time, the galaxy would never forget them again.